Hi, I'm Jim with Pour the Juice, and in this video, I want to talk about something going on in the bourbon world, business bourbon world. I want to talk about Old Elk selling to Middle West Spirits in Ohio. And I want to talk about it because I think it's really interesting. Um, I'll start a little bit with what I know about each distillery, and then I'll talk about what I think it means moving forward for them. Um, and I don't know a ton about Old Elk, especially, but what I do know is they've kind of started out the similar way as a lot of other distilleries, um, selling whiskey that they bought from other distillers, and then a lot of their stuff has been finished. So, this one is a sherry cask finish. They do Madeira cask finishes. They do cognac finishes. Um, Tons and tons of finishes on their whiskey. A lot of them are high malt, but I know they also do wheat whiskeys. And as far as I know, they get a lot of their whiskey from MGP. Um, Now, what kind of made them popular or famous or uh, known across the US, in my mind, is the marketing. Um, the bottle's pretty cool. It's unique. It has a cool topper that's kind of like, I don't know if it's actual elk antler, but it looks like it is. It's heavy. And like I said, they do a bunch of different finishes, and people like trying different finished whiskeys. Um, in my experience, Old Elk was never the absolute best whiskey. I'm not a big fan of high malt American whiskeys, so maybe that's why. Because what I got out of this is just a ton of malt and kind of young malt, to be honest with you. Um, but that's okay. I still love the brand. I love marketing. Sucker for marketing. So I'll still, I would still buy a couple of Old Elk bottles out there. Now they had started to make their own distillate bottles. They started bottling their own distillate, and I hadn't tried any of those that I know of. So maybe their own distillate would really surprise me. Um, Now on to Middle West Spirits. I don't have a bottle from Middle West Spirits, but Middle West Spirits has existed for 10 years or so, I believe, out of Ohio. And they do some really cool stuff. Um, I first got to know them off of an SLB Drinks video um, where they reviewed their pumpernickel rye. And I thought that was really cool. And I've been lucky enough to go to some tastings for Middle West Spirits and tried a bunch of their stuff. Their ported pumpernickel rye is absolutely fantastic. Everything that I've ever tried from them has been great. Um, but for them, it's kind of the other way around. The marketing aspect of it's kind of different from Old Elk. To me, it's like the shimmer, the shine of the bottle. You get the marketing right up front, and it's not as much about the whiskey. Whereas Middle West Spirits, to me, is all about the whiskey. The bottles are unique, but they don't kind of shine on the shelf um, the way that Old Elk jumps out. Now, Middle West Spirits has purchased Old Elk, purchased the brand and the distillery, as far as I could tell. And so, what does that mean going forward? You know, I think it would be really cool if Middle West Spirits was still using the Old Elk brand, but using their own distillate. Or, I heard one of the rumors that they really wanted to do this was so they could distill out in Colorado, which is where Old Elk is. So they bought the distillery so they could distill out there and in Ohio, making transportation cheaper, making shipping cheaper for them. Um, but in general, I think Middle West kind of makes some of the most fantastic whiskey out there, and for them to then be distilling Old Elk in these fancy bottles and having better whiskey that's being finished sounds really appealing to me. I love finished whiskey though, so the idea that better whiskey would be in these bottles at being finished um, really sounds fantastic. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting, and I wanted to talk about that today. It's interesting to see where the bourbon market's going, to see some of these brands sell, some of these whiskey companies unfortunately going under. But that's, I think, is the nature of the game. Once that bourbon bubble kind of popped a little bit, started deflating. Not everybody's going to survive that. Some of the best brands will. The best whiskey will. Um, yeah, very interesting. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on the purchase. Do you think it's going to be a great thing for Middle West Spirits? Where do you think this goes? And do you see this type of thing continuing to happen? Do you foresee more brands being purchased over the next few years by some bigger distilleries? Is like the start of a trend? I don't know if it is or not. I think it's interesting to think about, but let me know. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I already asked you to comment and let me know what your thoughts are about the topic. But yeah, thanks for watching. Cheers.